A substantial early vote sets the stage for a very substantial primary. What's at stake come Tuesday for the Hutchinson administration? And how super will Arkansas be in a campaign like few other? First, the manager of a party that's resisting management. Arkansas Week next.
Arkansas Week is made possible in part by the Arkansas Times, keeping you informed by covering people, events, and politics in Arkansas. By FM 89, KUAR in Little Rock, with in-depth news reporting, analysis, and discussion each weekday.
This is Arkansas Week.
Hello again, everyone, and thanks for joining us for Arkansas Week. Super Tuesday coming up nationally, or at least regionally mostly, and in Arkansas as well. It would be stating the obvious to say that most of the action is on the GOP side. So before we go to our roundtable, the Republican State Chairman, Doyle Webb, joins us.
Glad to be with you, Steve.
Doyle,
Always
enjoy the
show. Enjoy the show.
Well, thanks very much for coming in. Let's begin this way. The action obviously is on your side. The attention is on your side of the ballot. Which GOP is going to prevail?
The Arkansas GOP and the United States GOP will prevail.
Well,
it does not matter who receives the most delegates out of Arkansas. Our party will be united when it comes to November.
Well, I'm thinking specifically in terms of, say, April, when there's a special legislative session and a fiscal session to follow. The stakes for Mr. Hutchinson, Governor Hutchinson, the titular head of your party, are high.
Governor Hutchinson is a great governor. He has had the ability to transcend a lot of issues. He speaks for the Republican Party. He is leading Arkansas in a very good way, a very conservative good way. Our people are starting to notice Arkansas now for the first time in our history.
Well, in terms of, say, the keystone of his administration, which is the private option, which now, well, or the Arkansas Works, and of course, Mr. Hutchinson has attached in the budget that says he'll submit some highway money in there. There would appear to be some fairly stiff resistance and significant resistance, at least in terms of the three-quarter vote requirement in both houses, to extending that program, to granting Mr. Hutchinson the budget that he's looking for. How's that going to work?
Well, once again,
I
can't forecast what will occur in the session. I know that the governor and his people are very active in working with legislators, explaining what the details of Arkansas Works will be and how we move from there. He's also very adamant that he believes that Obamacare should be repealed and replaced, and separates the two very clearly, but advocates that we should move forward with Arkansas Works and build Arkansas new highways as a result of the savings that we would receive.
All right, let's take a look nationally then. If you had to say on this Friday morning, as we're taping this broadcast, how it's going to shake out in terms of the big three, as it were, how would it do? You're polling now, I know, and we'd hope to have the numbers.
You know, if I were guessing, and that would strictly be a guess, I would say that Arkansas is going to split a third, and a third. And we'll have to see who's going to get the leading part of that third.
Are you being diplomatic here, Mr.
No,
Chairman?
I'm being very honest, Steve. It's hard to tell at this point. We have seen some early polling that said that Senator Cruz was leading at 29%, and Mr. Trump and Senator Marco Rubio were at 23%. That was about 2 or 3 weeks ago. I think we're still a third, and a third state.
Well, I think it's also fair to say that most of the GOP establishment in Arkansas, starting with Mr. Hutchinson, or at the top anyway, most of the congressional delegation, which is all Republican, a great many members of the General Assembly have sided with Mr. Rubio. Can that make a difference?
Absolutely. We have popular congressmen, we have popular United States senators, we have a popular governor, and it's more than sitting on the sidelines. Governor Hutchinson will be out campaigning with Senator Rubio, and I think that will make a difference. But Senator Cruz has been in state a lot. Mr. Trump has been in state. They each have their followings, and those are adamant followings. I noticed at the end of business on Wednesday, 60% of those voting in the primary were voting Republican. If we continue that trend, we will vote more Republicans in this primary than the Democrats vote. That will be historic for Arkansas, and once again shows that Arkansas is realigning to the Republican side and leaving the Democratic side.
How far to the right, though, Mr. Chairman, do you see it going?
Oh, I don't know. I never like to use that definition. I would rather say, we're a pro-life party, we're a pro-Second Amendment party, we're a lower tax party, we're leave us alone federal government party. The programs of Barack Obama have caused people to realize that they are not in support of an overreaching Democratic Party. And that's defined the state Democratic Party as well, because they have failed to stand up to those policies of Barack Obama. People in Arkansas now realize we are conservative Republicans, and they're voting in our primary. Steve, for the first time in our history, we had over 700 people file for county office throughout the state of Arkansas. That's unheard of. We had more people file in the 1st Congressional District for county office than we had elected Republicans in the state at the end of 2012. That is a tremendous shift. People in Arkansas now realize they are Republican.
Well, when the Democrats were the dominant party, the incumbent governors often found themselves herding cats because the Democratic side was fairly diverse. Nobody accused it of being even in the days of Democratic dominance, nobody accused it of being a liberal party. But this has always been a fairly conservative state. Now it falls to you and to Mr. Hutchinson or whomever may be the senior elected Republican official to herd those cats. How difficult a job is it?
I don't see it as that difficult. We always look to see where we agree rather than where we disagree. And if we can build on our agreements, smaller government, lower taxes. We've just had the largest tax reduction in Arkansas history under Asa Hutchinson. He also, whatever he promised, he has delivered on those promises. Promises made, promises delivered, that's the Republican Party.
Kind of the rub, though, is it not, Mr. Chairman, in the sense that the tax cuts that were promised by and delivered by Mr. Hutchinson largely financed through the Affordable Care Act?
Well, I never look at where things are funded through. The idea is that we're reducing taxes for the middle class, and that's what's important to the people of Arkansas.
We have to end it there. Mr. Chairman, thanks very much for coming in.
Great being with you today. Thank you. Thank you.
We'll be right back. Back now with today's terrible trio. Jacob Kaufman joins us from KUAR Public Radio in Central Arkansas. David Keith from the journalism faculty at UCA. Ernie Dumas, an independent journalist. And thanks to everybody for coming in. I had basically 3 categories of races: presidential, General Assembly, legislature, and legislative and courts. And they all seem to me to be fairly interconnected here. Jacob.
Oh yeah, I guess they are interconnected. There's a big theme throughout the national races about anti-establishment versus these establishment figures. We see that playing out perfectly in Arkansas. Governor Hutchinson, almost everyone, save Senator Cotton and Bozeman at this point, have endorsed Florida Senator Marco Rubio for president. That's the situation playing out elsewhere. It didn't help him win with Nikki Haley's endorsement in South Carolina. But Donald Trump, of course, says, I don't need those endorsements anyway. The politicians should be afraid of me.
Yeah, Ernie?
Well, it's when this thing started, March 1 was going to be Mike Huckabee's day. In fact, that's why we're having an election next Tuesday, is to benefit Mike Huckabee. We've moved all the elections up until that day to improve his chances of getting a block of delegates out of his favorite son state, and that's supposed to propel him forward. He was going to win Iowa. That was his state that he won so easily back in 2008, and this was going to be his state. It was going to give him a second lift. But in the interim, of course, he totally collapsed in Iowa. He got 3,000 votes and withdrew from the race. And so now it's an important state because it's Rubio. And that's what everybody's going to be looking at. This is the one chance that Rubio might have Tuesday to pick up a win. He has not yet gotten a victory in any state. He's finished second a couple of times. But he's got to win a state to show that he's really a viable candidate, and Arkansas seems to be his best chance. Now, I think Doral Webb, as he said earlier, I think he may be right. It seems to be about a three-way split now between Rubio, Senator Ted Cruz, and Donald Trump. And he now enjoys all the endorsements, not all the endorsements, but all the major endorsements. From the governor on down, the governor's campaigning with him. Members of Congress have endorsed him. Quite a number of legislators have endorsed him. A number of other statewide officials have endorsed him. And the Arkansas Democrat Gazette, which I guess you might call the House organ of the Republican Party, endorsed him, has been running almost daily editorials denouncing Trump, and they've carried op-ed columns from other state officials, other politicians endorsing Marco Rubio. So that's the big question mark Tuesday, is whether Marco Rubio can pull it out. Yep. Ted Cruz has had somewhat of a lead in polls earlier on. Donald Trump obviously has a lot of support. So that's the big question, I think, in Arkansas Tuesday.
But if he wins, he needs a big win, because Arkansas is proportionally allocating its delegates.
Well, he's not going to win big, I think, but he might eke out a win. Whoever I think wins is probably going to win by a fairly narrow margin. I think all three of them will get 20% or more. So, but it would be better for him to win big.
The thing about, first of all, Arkansas with not as many delegates as many of the other states.
Right. One of the smaller, actually.
Yeah, it's a small number. That's the way we are in so many aspects. But still, a win is a win is a win. And like Ernie said, he has to show that it's possible for him to win a vote, because he hasn't done that yet. I mean, he has performed credibly. He's made progress. But again, he has to take that next step of actually being the #1 vote getter in a state, and that I agree that will give him a little bit more of a push that he can continue. If he just continues to stay in second or third place, I mean, obviously from a mathematical standpoint, he's losing ground, but I think also from a public perception standpoint and viability, he's losing ground as well.
He is the establishment candidate for the Republican Party nationally in Arkansas. Everybody has settled on Marco Rubio. He's got to win it. It's crucial. This week is crucial, but more crucial than that is coming up in 2 weeks on March 15th. You've got the primary in Ohio and in Florida, and Donald Trump is leading substantially in the polls in Florida. If Rubio loses his home state, I think it's all over.
Well, it doesn't matter what he does in Arkansas.
The latest Q poll I saw showed Mr. Trump leading Mr. Rubio in Florida by 17 points. Jacob,
the fact that we're even talking about Arkansas as a symbolic victory, as a state that could provide a lift to a campaign, really shows how dire it is for Marco Rubio, even though the media energy and the endorsement energy is behind him trying to get Republicans to coalesce. But that really is how bad of straits that he's in, is that something like Arkansas could be a lift. And we see that with all sorts of candidates coming this weekend. Rubio's coming twice over the weekend, once with Governor Hutchinson, as you mentioned, and Ted Cruz is coming as well, and so is Donald Trump. I think Cruz and Trump will be in Bentonville at the same time on Sunday.
Well, as Chairman Webb said a moment ago, or maybe before the broadcast began, we were chatting, he noted that what this election cycle has done is brought to the Republican primaries anyway, not necessarily the fold per se, but a lot of new voters who are going to be voting Republican for the first time. It's fair to say that my sense is they're probably fairly angry people, upset, irritated, frightened.
Well, and I think some of that, though, getting back to Rubio as the establishment candidate, a lot of these people, they're angry at the establishment, which certainly plays into Trump and Cruz. Now, you would think that would divide the anti-establishment vote to a point that might give Rubio a boost, but there obviously is so much anti-establishment sentiment out there that both Cruz and Trump can continue to perform very well, and Rubio as the establishment, as the person who has the support of so many the members of Congress and at the state level in the legislature and constitutional offices, it doesn't matter to people because so many voters are tired of that establishment.
Well, for the near term anyway, emphasize the near term, Governor Hutchinson needs a legislature worse than he needs a president. That's his number one objective. And that looks...
Yeah, and we talk about this all the time on this program, the issue of Medicaid expansion. It passes so narrowly year to year. I think last year they only had one vote to spare, or the private option would have been canceled on the spot. With that said, there are 3 state Senate primaries in the Republican Party this year, one in Cabot with Eddie Joe Williams and R.D. Hobbs, I believe, and Jane English and Donnie Copeland in North Little Rock. And just one of these legislators, if they switched in these 3 races from the incumbent that generally favors this type of Medicaid expansion, could really put a huge hole in the governor's budget plan. And, you know, but of course, no matter what happens in this election, the same people will vote on it as are in office right now.
But I think it does send a message. I think it's extremely important for the governor and the future of his administration that he carry these elections, or most of them. And I think there may be some other elections out in the state.
And he's put himself out there for this.
He has. Yeah. He's put himself out there because he's demonstrated, look, this is important to me, and to the Republican Party and to the state. So if he wins those elections, then it kind of sends a message it's okay. And I think it will hearten other legislators as well, and they can probably find a way to
he's still going to be good. He has still the power of the office and can.
And while
bargain.
we do have this anti-establishment wave of voters in, we've had some pretty good turnouts in other states for Republicans. There's no indication that they're paying any attention to any of these local races. So how that will pan out to these local legislators, I don't know if a Donald Trump supporter could discern which of the 2 state legislative candidates in their district.
Well, I mean,
is
there are a
anti-establishment.
lot, but even within all these state legislative races, there certainly is the Obamacare factor. If an incumbent supported it, a Republican incumbent supported the private option, that fact is showing up in his or her opponent's campaign literature.
It's the association with Barack Obama. I mean, practically every Republican candidate, whether they're running for the legislature or anything else, you associate your opponent, your Democratic opponent, or if it's your Republican opponent or whoever, you associate them somehow with Barack Obama. We're seeing it in the Supreme Court races where party is not supposed to be a matter. And it's either, if it's not Obamacare directly, it's Obama in some other fashion. So that's a key for the party in all statewide.
There's a candidate for a county office in Faulkner County who has on his literature he opposes Obamacare. And he's running for a county office, has absolutely nothing to do with health care, Obamacare, health insurance at any level, but it's on his literature that he opposes Obamacare.
Although probably 20% of Faulkner County is getting Medicaid benefits.
At least.
Well, you mentioned at the beginning of this topic, we've deviated a little bit about the anti-establishment vote in these states, just generally. And the big hope for the anti-Trump crowd was, back in Iowa at least, is that sure, they might show up in a poll saying they like Trump, but they won't show up to vote. But that has been the case in most of these primary states, is that they have showed up to vote for him.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Pretty energized bunch.
Right, and I think in the states, and we're getting more states with primaries as opposed to caucuses, I think that strengthens Trump even more, as it's much easier to participate in a primary, in a vote. You can vote early, you can vote absentee, vote on election day, whatever, as opposed to a caucus, which that takes a little bit more of an effort to participate in something like that. And so I think that helps a candidate like Trump even more when we're getting into the more primaries kind of move, even though there are a lot of caucus states out there.
Ernie mentioned the courts, and that was obviously on our agenda too. We are seeing an awful lot of money spent, Ernie, in these races from so-called dark money. It's flooding in.
The money being spent by the candidates' own campaigns is substantial, but not really out of line with what we've seen in the past in Supreme Court races. But the difference this time is this, what we call, not all of it dark money, but the money that
outside money.
Outside money, and there are a couple of categories of outside money. But what we call dark money is where some organization, they may just have a post office box drop in suburban Washington someplace, and nobody knows who they're funding, where the source of the money comes in. They'll dump a couple of $100,000 into a race attacking one candidate. And it's always got a flowery name for the group, law enforcement something or other, or
democracy, freedom,
whatever.
Judicial Crisis Network
right.
is the one
And
that's
the
coming.
Judicial Crisis Network, and there's another one that has a Republican in its name.
Even though it's not affiliated with the Republican
It's
Party.
not affiliated with the Republican Party, but it attacks Clark Mason and, in both instances, attacks Courtney Goodson, who is a justice now, and then attacks Clark Mason in the other race, both because it associates him with Barack Obama in some fashion. And so that's, and the Republican Party is in the name of one of them. But, the party is not supposed to have a role in judicial races.
Nonpartisan.
And the campaign almost turns into each opponent trying to force the other one to apologize for these ads that are being produced outside of their campaign, and usually both sides tend to have some money going towards it.
And the thing is, I think maybe in a judicial race, attacks such as this can be even more effective than in a legislative race, because judicial candidates, they don't say nearly as much. They don't really talk about issues. About all they ever say is, I'm going to be a good, fair judge. I mean, that's basically the campaign for all of them. And so we have all these attacks, and like Jacob said, their response is, well, my opponent should disavow this type of advertising, and typically the opponent had nothing to do with it. I mean, it's this outside group that is pumping these hundreds of thousands of dollars into the state. I mean, it's great for the television stations and the direct mail companies.
Yeah, some of the direct mail is kind of funny, because we've been here in Little Rock been saturated with ads, these big cards every day attacking Courtney Goodson, and it says that she received money from the Clintons, and that Judge Kemp has never received any money. Does not take money from the Clintons. Well, of course, originally when she first ran, the Clintons were married in her then father-in-law and mother-in-law's house. And of course, they did support Courtney Goodson in the first race. They're not supporting her now, and probably never will again. But never. So in Little Rock, which is going to go, which is a big Clinton town and largely Democratic town, everybody's getting these flyers attacking Courtney Goodson for getting the Clinton money. So that's not going to help Judge Kemp in Little Rock.
This councilman that's running as a Republican, has he ever accepted money from the Clintons?
This county officer, I doubt it, but I don't know.
All right.
I'll look into it.
All right. Well, we just came off a debate Thursday night with the five. 3 actively participated. And I was struck by how off his game Mr. Trump seemed. He had to have known that he was both Mr. Rubio and Mr. Cruz had him in their sights. They had to have really bruised it. We're going to try to bruise him up pretty bad, and he just seemed not the same Donald.
I mean, I think we talked about this a little bit before, but I kind of think that he stood his own. He knew these attacks were coming. These were expected attacks. We've heard these before. Rubio and Cruz really tried, and they launched into it right away. It was 20 minutes of people talking over each other, but Trump came back with really his classic Trump style, where he'd say something like, my wall's going to cost $10 billion, but if these guys do it, it's going to cost $200 billion.
Oh, yeah. Well.
People, I think his supporters really eat that stuff up, and they almost like that he's getting attacked. He always does well whenever he gets into these kind of controversies.
Yeah. I think, again, he's able to present himself as the anti-establishment. That the sitting senators have to gang up on me, because if he's being attacked, and that emphasizes his point that they're scared of me, and that I'm the one that they know they have to beat, and they haven't been able to do it to this point. And I think to a degree he's always kind of shrugged them off in the past, almost easily. And so maybe they ganged up on him a little bit harder, and so it was not quite so easy to shrug him off.
He may have held his own, but I nonetheless think that it's a good thing for Mr. Trump that Mr. Rubio didn't perform earlier the way he did Thursday night.
That's
display
true.
that assertive.
A lot of that kind of dynamic was taken up by Jeb Bush a little bit. They were the two ones that usually have some sort of sparring match at the debate. It always seemed to be playing out the same way, where Jeb ended up looking a little bit weak. But I mean, I think Trump sort of handled it a lot very similar way. He'd be dismissive, some sort of insulting joke, and he'd move on. And if the crowd booed him, he'd say, "You're all donors."
Bernie.
Well, yeah, they jumped on him about his past support for Democrats and his past support for socialized medicine, although he said, "I'm not for socialized medicine," but indeed in the past he had said that he was for Medicare for all or for a single-payer system.
Some type of universal health care.
And that all the other nations, all the other developed nations of the world insured everybody, and he was going to do it too, and he was not going to let people die on the streets, not let people die on the sidewalks. But I think he handled himself pretty well in that overall. I mean, if you analyze it, his answers were pretty poor. But I mean, it's Donald Trump. He's a showman, and people, I think, don't really care what the.
Well, and that's again, a televised debate is more performance than substance.
It is,
and for the most part, and it often comes down to who has the best or the worst soundbite or appearance or things along this line.
Got to end it there because we're out of time. Guys, thanks to you for coming in. As always, thanks to you for watching. See you next week.
Arkansas Week is made possible in part by the Arkansas Times, keeping you informed by covering people, events, and politics in Arkansas. By FM 89, KUAR in Little Rock, with in-depth news reporting, analysis, and discussion each weekday.